Okay, we are live again. Welcome everyone. This is a day like this is like our third live today. So welcome everyone. We're here at the Doc Bookshop in Fort Worth, Texas. My name is Donna Craddock, and I'm going to be and Danya Craddock is with me today. Um, and we are co-owners of the Doc Bookshop, and we're experiencing what we call the Africa and African Diaspora Literary Experience. And what we're doing today is just trying to have dialogue about Africans in different areas of the world, and also share some of the literature. We got a beautiful display. So those who are in person, if you get a chance, definitely visit our book display, the different books from writers in the diaspora, and we're gonna. And this is and during this time we're going to talk about different travels. Those who actually been to the continent are going to share their experiences. And so right now I'm just going to ask that everyone would just go to our YouTube channel, to the Doc Bookshop. Please subscribe, please like it, and please share. And I'm going to make sure that it's working. And I ask that. Go ahead, Anya.
While she's making sure that it's working, I just again want to explain to people that every year in July, we focus on the Africa and the African diaspora. It is so important to us to have those ongoing conversations. If you know, the Doc Bookshop has almost a theme or create a purpose every month, whether it's Black History Month, Women's Month, Poetry Month, um, celebrating our mom month and Juneteenth, and now we're in July. Every year we focus on Africa and the African diaspora. So we pick a particular day, but all month long we display books. And if you get a chance, even on our website, you can also go to the website. You'll see a display of books from fiction and nonfiction, including biographies. We have poetry, we have children books. All that is on the website as well as in the store. And in the store, we have just a great selection, and we dive deep into the issues in Africa with our in-store experience. Okay, she probably doesn't feel like YouTube, but I'll share it to you. But for this segment, we are focused on those that have traveled just to share their experience. And for those that don't get a chance to travel, sometimes you can live vicariously through somebody else, or grab a book. I think there was a quote, I hate to use Dr. Seuss, but all the book, the places you can go in a book. So that is kind of the energy we take, especially with our book display. If you didn't get a chance to travel, you can definitely come and travel through the books. There are so many great, detailed books from Africa. You got women from Zimbabwe, Zambia, Ghana. All those authors are in our store today.
Okay, so as I'm checking, because like I said, I like to check my channels. So YouTube, we got to figure out, Ashley, we didn't get the YouTube on there. So, but we are on Facebook Live.
The YouTube is on.
Huh?
Yeah, YouTube is live.
Okay, great.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad it's just me. Okay. I have to figure out why it's not showing up on my phone. But
And a little bit more background information. I am, like you said, Danya Craddock on the Doc's Bookshop. I did study what is today the University of West Indies in Kingston. And so that's where I really found my love of literature. Actually, was in Kingston, Jamaica. My professor at that particular time was kind of upset that I didn't know a lot about African American literature, but at the same time, she was telling me about African American literature as well as Caribbean literature. And one of the presentations I did, I remember for her class, was William Lammy in The Castle of My Skin, and talked about the fusion of East Indian and African culture. So, and from then on, when I got back to the States, I was just head on, focusing on literature, and I found a love and passion for literature, which is why we have the bookstore today, and which is why we focus on July, pick a month to dive into the literature for those that don't have an opportunity to explore some of this great literature, even in the energy of Zora Neale Hurston. Before I went down to the island, one of the books that I had to read was Zora Neale Hurston, Tell My Horse. And she documents her experience in the Caribbean, which was a humbling experience for her. But I won't keep going so long because I do want our panel to go ahead and introduce themselves and just just introduce themselves. And I know
Okay,
I'm
well,
going to start with Dr. Sabir.
okay.
Or I reached out to Ricky Clark, and he would just said so much about Dr. Sabir. I said, oh, okay. And so just introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Aquaba. Aquaba just means welcome in Tree language. My name is Wafik Sabir. I am by trade an educator, department chair at the Tarrant County College, where I also serve as the head of the Behavioral Sciences Department. So it is really a great pleasure to be here and be part of this discussion today about my travel, and I am more excited about hearing everyone else's travel to the continent.
Hi, my name is Dooney. I was actually just passing by here and you asked who's been to Africa, so I was like, why not? I'll just come up and share my experience. I was born and raised in the States, but I am Nigerian. My parents immigrated here. Just happy to be here and share my experience.
Okay.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Ben Deli Jassi. I'm an organizer with the All African People's Revolutionary Party and telecom engineer by trade. And most of my travels in Africa has been under the guise of doing political work for our Pan-African organization. So that's kind of the perspective of my African travels.
Wonderful. We're glad you all are here.
And Donna, she actually studied in Kingston with me. We did our foundational courses in Kingston.
I would tell anyone, if you're in college and you get a chance to study abroad. Take advantage of it. And that's what we did. But I had my name is Donna Craddock, one of the co-owners of the Doc Book Shop, and I had the opportunity to go to Kenya and Ghana. I went to Kenya with my church, my pastor, and then I went to Ghana with my professor, Dr. Stacey Floyd Thomas at Bright Divinity. And so those are the two places I've been. Okay.
So to jump into the conversation, I am going to start with Dr. Sabir, and just give us a background information on your experience and why you chose to go to Ghana and stay for, I don't know how many months you stayed there for.
4 months.
4 months. Just kind of give us a background why you chose Ghana to go to and your experience during those 4 months.
Sure. So I grew up in a very Afrocentric home where aunties and uncles had traveled to Ghana, traveled to the continent, and I just remember hearing about the continent as a child. It wasn't until later in life that a challenge came upon me, which was by my next door neighbor. She's an elder who travels quite a bit, and she had gone to South Africa. And when she came back, she was very excited. And she said, the next time you have to go with us, with me. And I said, yes, ma'am. Now, that was, I don't know, before COVID, before the pandemic. Coming out of that in 2023, she approached me again and she said, are you ready? And I said, well, ready for what? She said, remember, we're going to Africa. And I'm trying to figure out how to get out of this because I'd already said, yes, ma'am, years prior, right? So I said, yes, ma'am, once again. She said, okay, put your deposit down and you're going to pay for this over the next few months. And we're going to be gone July of 2023. Yes, ma'am. So the wife and I made that voyage. It was a 10-day trip. We were tourists. And as tourists, you do the tourist thing. You take pictures, you go to sleep, you eat, you do all of those things. But you never really immerse yourself into the culture as so much because you're busy. The last day that I was there, I made a trip over to the University of Ghana, which is akin to like Harvard University is here in the States. It is the #1 ranked university in West Africa, and I believe there's a second university in Nigeria. But anyway, I made contact with the department chair there at the School of Social Sciences. Shout out to the School of Social Sciences at the University of Ghana. And I started to put together a relationship and some networking that would allow me to return at some point. I didn't realize that the return would be the very next year. So I asked for a sabbatical from my college. They approved the sabbatical for me to be gone for a year. And I said, I'm going to Ghana. There was just no other place on the planet that I wanted to go to. And so I left September of 2025, and I returned to the States reluctantly. 2024, I'm sorry. I left September 2024. I returned reluctantly January of 2025. I said reluctantly because after being on the continent for 4 months and having immersed yourself in the culture and seeing the richness in everything that the continent offers, and then having to come back to this, I started to become very depressed in January, early January. And I say that because I literally in December, I'm there, and I see the transfer of power. It's not a arm wrestling match. It is a bowing of I'm handing you this power because the people want you to be in power. And so the former president was leaving office. He had served 2 terms. His Excellency Nana Addo, and he was transferring that power to the new president, John Mahama. And I sat there, I got up early that morning and I watched this on live television, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Royalty, African royalty, world leaders came to acknowledge this man in the inauguration. And one thing that he did that probably would not happen over here, but he selected, and it did happen over here, but the way this occurred was just remarkable. He selected a woman to be the vice president. So when he won, she became the first female vice president of Ghana, something that's never occurred before. And I got a chance to just sit and listen to her resume. It took them nearly 5 minutes just to read off her resume. So that experience, being there for 4 months, there's so much I could say about it, and I can't wait to get back. I've already established all of the networking that I need to get back there, but I'm very thankful that I had that opportunity, and thankful that I was able to connect with so many aunties and uncles. And I felt some kind of way when this little boy called me an uncle. And he said, uncle. And I kept walking. And he said, uncle. And I said, is he talking to me? Because I don't feel like an uncle. But that's a matter of respect because I'm older than him. And so I had to submit to that. But there were so many wonderful experiences that I had while I was there. But as an educator, my job really was to do research, to be involved in scholarship, and to also understand the politics a little bit, understand some language. There's so many languages that are spoken there, and to really have a great appreciation, I would say, for the food. Everything there is organic, even the chickens. Yeah, the chickens and the goats are organic. But anyway, enough said on that. But yes, thank you.
And okay, we went to the educator. I'm going to come back to you because I do want to come back to the comment. But I want to jump in as an organizer, going over to Africa again. Reiterate where you went, why you picked that place, and your just high level your experience.
So I guess the precursor, being an organizer in the APRP, I came in as a student at Jackson State after hearing Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, who spent half of his life in Guinea-Conakry. They would always come to the U.S. And Europe to do speaking tours to help recruit for the organization. One of the things that he would do I'm from Chicago. One of the things he would do, he was always come to Chicago for the month of Savior's Day for the Nation of Islam. And in his last years after he came down with the cancer, he was wheelchair bound that last period. And I was one of his helpers during that. So during that period, the APRP was really trying to pick up and accelerate our work in Africa. And one of the places that we are operating is Guinea-Bissau, the territory that was colonized by the Portuguese, along with Cape Verde, Mozambique, Angola, Sao Tome and Principe. So my first trip home was to Senegal in 1998. That was a jump stop to get to Guinea-Bissau. And at that time, our party was still doing work with Amir Cabral's party, PAIGC, African Party for Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde. And there I got a chance to, well, let me step back. So one of the main products of Guinea-Bissau is cashew nuts. For those who know cashews don't grow they're not ground nuts, they grow in trees. So it's a cashew apple and then a nut. And the APRP, through some fundraising mechanisms, raise money for truck for transporting the goods and then a cashew processing machine to assist two sub-organizations. They have a women's organization called Udamu Union, the Democratic Union of Guinean Women, and then a youth organization called JOC, Amir Cabral African Youth. So both of them actually own farms, cashew farms that was producing things. But also during that trip, I was able to meet some of the freedom fighters that actually fought against Portugal, and a lot of them were women. So people like Carmen Pereira, people like Teodora Gomez, who in fact is still alive. We got a chance to meet with them, get political knowledge on their broad history, and then move from there. So I've been able to travel to about 20 something different countries, primarily doing work for the APRP. But that was my initial foray into the African world. And for me, I guess I'm always conscious, and for those who have not been to Africa, always keep this in mind, that whether we're well off or not well off, generally we are going there as a privileged class, just to be able to afford $1,500 to $2,000 to get on an airplane. From that perspective, you're privileged, whether you think you are or not. And so you may get a certain interaction with the assumption that you're well off. Because even people who are born on the continent, who live over here, when they go home to visit, they got to come with gifts and all kind of stuff, because the assumption is, hey, you're living in Europe, you're living in Canada, you're living in America, it's all good for you, and you live in large, and people are struggling, in a lot of those cases. So I think it's important to see the oneness with our people and not go over as the regular tourist or with this U.S. exceptionalism that people outside of the U.S. often talk about.
This is power pack. I mean, I almost need to take notes. And well, I got to give her. I almost need to take some notes to re-ask my next question, my follow-up question. But I'm trying to.
But what was the last country you said you went to 20? But what was your last country you were at?
The last country I visited was Zambia.
Zambia.
Because I was actually going to do a master's program there in 2022.
We got the Lusaka. Did you see the Lusaka book we have back there?
No.
Okay. We're going to show you that book. Master of Lusaka.
But I lived in Tanzania for a few years because I was married to a Tanzanian woman.
Okay. And we had one of the Black Panthers that moved to Tanzania. But we're going to...
I met them as well.
You did?
Yeah, the O'Neill. Charles Pete O'Neill.
Wow.
Okay. I actually, just a side story, I just missed, because Geronimo Pratt lived his final years in Tanzania and was helping them develop that center, the United African Alliance Community Center. And I just missed him, I don't know if it was 2005, 2006, because of course, what's the lawyer's name? Johnny Cochran, who was the one that got him out of prison. He had just died. So he was leaving Tanzania to come back to the U.S. for his funeral. And I actually met him at the Savior's Day, at the Nation of Islam Savior's Day, the one I mentioned about Kwame Ture. But I didn't get a chance to see him on the other side before he passed a few years later after that.
So, wow. And young lady, I can't think of your name.
Junie.
Dooney. Okay, I do that.
Dooney?
Dooney.
Yes.
I want want you to take a perspective of family, that your family is from Nigeria, and I hate to say this, I do know not a lot of Nigerian families in the States, but I learned a lot through books. Like Nini Ackelford, I'm a book nerd. Nini Ackelford's book, and she's from Nigeria, and there's always this conversation about how you live your life, what your profession should be, because Nigerians take that very serious, and a lot of them turn authors, and they just have so many problems of explaining that to their family. But back to you, just tell us about your Nigerian heritage and your experience going back and forth.
Yeah, bear with me. I don't have anything prepared. So,
That's okay.
Let me think. Okay, so like I said, I was born and raised here. I was born in Minnesota, and then when I was like a year old, came to Texas. So my parents, though, they were born abroad, and they came here, and they would go back to Nigeria every so often. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, so it's pricey to take all of us, so we never went, but they would always go, here and there. And so in 2021, my cousin got married, and she got married in Nigeria. And that was my first time there. And I remember being on the plane, and I was always looking forward to going to Nigeria. And I remember being on the plane and just seeing the shoreline come up, and I was getting teary-eyed because it was like, I've never been there. Like, it was always just kind of like an abstract thing in my mind. So to just see it, and it's like, okay, this is like real. Like, I'm actually, here, coming here, and just being embraced with open arms. It was great. And I think once I got there, the biggest thing was just kind of the culture shock. It's like, even growing up in a Nigerian home and hearing all the things, and even seeing things on the news, once you're actually there, it's just such a big culture shock. One of like you mentioned, just the privilege that you have, the little things you take for granted here, even if you're not, Jeff Bezos or well off, like even if you're whatever, like if you just see like how kind of the average person lives there, you just really come to just kind of realize maybe like your positionality in the world. And as you mentioned, I think the biggest thing for me was family. So whenever you're a first generation person, I remember, growing up here and hearing a lot of people spend time with their grandparents and stuff. I could probably count on my hands how many times I've seen my grandparents, except maybe my grandma. But being there and seeing my grandma's sisters for the first time was really cool. And it was just a lot of like connecting culturally, just hearing people's stories. And it's like, wow, I'm 28 now, but I was 25 when I went. I'm 25, I've never met you, but you're my blood, So, and I know that can apply to anyone regardless of where they're from, but it's like, I think it's just kind of an interesting perspective to have, is because it's like, I think a lot of times, people will say people that are not on the continent, or people who don't know where they're from, don't have culture or something like that, but obviously that's not true. But also that even if you do know where you're from, there's still a lot of disconnect because of colonization, things like that. So being there and just kind of like seeing it, just like really in person, just made me realize that, wow, this is how disconnected I am from this. But I did appreciate a lot when I was there. I did have a good time. I was only in Lagos, Nigeria. I was in Ikeja for about 2 weeks, and I enjoyed myself. I can't really think of everything off the top of my head.
Now, I want to ask you what I see as especially common themes about just in the literary realm is they always identify when you're in Nigeria, are you Igbo or Yoruba, or your father is Yoruba or your mom Igbo? Are you aware of which?
Yes. Both of my parents are Yoruba.
And I don't know if you experienced the goat in your
The
goat. Across a lot of these things is this goat experience, and I don't know if you had that while you were in Nigeria.
It's funny. I don't know if it's the same thing you're referring to, but so we stay with my aunt, and she stays in this house, and in the front they kind of had chickens and like what's the word? Just like where the chickens stay, like the cages that are built on something, and then there was a goat there. It wasn't there when I left. But so that was so that was kind of like it was just interesting to see that like with literally fresh things there,
Right.
and just how disconnected. They're like, oh, do you want to watch him cut up the chicken? Like, no, like, to them it's like whatever.
Do you
So-
remember eating the goat?
I don't eat like red meat.
Oh, you
I
didn't
don't
eat it.
No, I'm sure they enjoyed it. but yeah, it was just interesting. Just I don't know, just so many things, and like how much slower paced things were there, which has their pros and cons. I really liked it. I think hopefully not going on a tangent, but in America we're just like this.
Oh, yeah.
And the pros of that is okay if you go to the post office, you're there and back. In Nigeria, you might be there for hours or just chilling or something. But I really like the slow pacedness of everything. And when I came here too, I also had like the post travel blues. I was like, dang, I did not want to come back. But yeah, I did have a good experience. I don't know.
I thought I said it because I read in a lot of things, and those born in America, they get kind of, I don't know. It's a whole different experience. They don't criticize it, but it changed them how they do food because food is very important to them. So, but Donna, I want you to kick off the conversation. Then we're going to go down just connecting the African American experience to your experience on the continent. When I say that is your the Amina castle that you went through, the door of no return that you experienced. And so I want you to just start us off, and everybody, then we're just going to go down the line of dealing with the African
You
American.
had a chance to do the ill community.
Okay,
Okay, because for me it was.
Well, no, I want you to talk about both of your experience, the connection, because I also want you to remember in Kenya the worship connection and experience that you had when you were in Kenya, and how that connects back to the African American experience. So we're doing a connection at this point, and you guys.
She got a lot on me here. That's a lot, Danya. But let's start with Kenya, because I'm looking at design. So I'm gonna start with Kenya, and actually that's why I went. Okay, let me just say, Danya. I have to say it because it's been a while since I've been to Africa on the continent. It's been a while, so I have to remember this stuff, and I wasn't expected to be on panel, so I'm kind of like you. We're flowing. Okay, so Kenya. I'm trying. Which one did I do first? Did I do Kenya or did I do Ghana? Do you remember?
You did Ghana, and then you did Kenya. I traveled with her.
Okay, but I did Kenya with my church. It was an awesome experience because I went with my pastor. Actually, it was his wife who was doing her book connection. Mm-hmm. She was doing her book release.
Victoria's discipleship
in Kenya, and so. Anyway, we went there to do that, and I think what stood out to me most in Kenya was, one, it is the worship. They worship on a whole different level as far as all day. I mean, worship is so intense. We kind of, we could do our little 2 hour on Sunday. We're pretty good, but I that was totally different for me. It's a deeper worship, and when you look at all that they're dealing with, you're like, do y'all really have time to be doing this? But it's a part of, it was a very deep experience. And we were at Uhuru Park in Nairobi, and we had it was a conference or a worship experience in Uhuru Park, and it was just thousands of people there. It was I've never seen that many. It was a sea of people worshiping. It was a very profound experience, and we also had a chance to visit the orphanage and be a blessing to them. We brought supplies, and of course money, and just try to bless different orphanages in Kenya, and that was just the amount of children without parents. And I guess we have it here too, but it was just crazy for me. It was sad because like, what happened? And then a lot of them was AIDS, was different diseases took their parents out, and it's like, so that was heartbreaking. And then, but I had a chance to experience the Maasai tribe, in Kenya, and just to see them doing their jumping traditions and just their whole tradition. It was very traditional stuff that they were doing. That was just enlightening. So it was just a lot. I'm like you, it's just a lot happening. So, but um, it was just, it was very memorable. And as far as worship, I will say that, African Americans, just African people in general, when we worship, it's just, we're just divine. We have, I don't want to just, I don't want to negate anyone else's experience, but I just think for, African people, it's just a different level of worship and prayer. So, but Ghana was more of a scholastic trip, because I went with my professor, Dr. Stacey Floyd Thomas. She was at Bright Divinity when I was there. I got a master's in Christian service. I'm not a preacher or anything like that. I work at a church. So, but anyway, but she insisted that I go with them, and it was wonderful. And when we went to El Camino Castle on the coast that deals with the door no return, I really think that's when I got, and just being in those dungeons and just that whole experience was very emotional, very deep, very solemn, and I think that's where, I don't want to say I heard voices, but it was an experience. I was literally down there by myself. It felt like I was down there by myself. Probably was a few there, but that's when I got the call to do more. It's like I got an assignment, and the assignment was, you heard voices like ancestors telling you to bring people to us, and I didn't really know what that meant, and so, but from that experience, I was talking to some of my colleagues. I was like, we got to do something to bring people to Ghana. They got to experience this, But I think for me though, it's really through the books. My assignment is to constantly lift up our ancestors' voices and bring people to our ancestors and to the continent through books. So that's kind of, I think, is my assignment. Not so much as far as taking people to travel to Ghana, which I thought it was initially, because I was like, we got to play a tour, we got to do this. But I think, and you have a lot of groups doing that. And I think it's great, because I think, I'm like you, if everyone get a chance, you need to go and just experience it. And we had a chance to experience a wedding there. The people we were staying with were getting married, and their wedding is a lot. it's a lot that goes into bringing the families together. They take that very serious too. There's a lot that goes into that, and so that was an experience. It's just, it was a wonderful experience.
Okay, I won't have you go into detail on your safari. We'll do that next, okay?
Let's do that. We do that later.
Dr. Sophia, go ahead and bring us into your experience in Ghana. Because I don't know if you made it to El Camino.
So when I landed, my first month I stayed in Cocabrite, which Cocabrite is about a good 30-45 minutes from the capital of Accra. And I stayed with an auntie out there at the Cocabrite Institute, which is a remarkable institute. If you just go online, you can see all that you need to about that institute. And so I'm there for the first month, and I'm making connections. I'm meeting so many people on a daily basis that are just coming to the institute. And I was posting pictures, mainly on LinkedIn. And I started getting responses from people that said, oh, it seems like you're on a great vacation. Wish I was there with you, that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, I'm not on vacation. I'm actually working. But from their perspective, because where I was staying, I'm literally having breakfast, lunch, and dinner on the beach. That was where I stayed. So it looked to others as if it was a vacation, and this was my life. Mm-hmm. The next 3 months, I went to an area called Tema, T-E-M-A. And Tema is about another 45 minutes from Accra, the capital. That's where kind of everything occurs. And had a really wonderful opportunity to just really go to all of the art. festivities, concerts. There's a jazz club, the Johnny Coltrane Jazz Club. Just there's so much that's there that people think is only here in America. Um, One thing in 2023 I didn't realize was that Ghana is roughly 75-80% Christian. But you don't know the difference between a Christian and a Muslim because they all look alike. You know the difference on Friday because the Muslims are walking down the street, and on Sunday all the Christians are walking down the street to church. But I would say that Ghanaians are 100% spiritual people. And the spirituality is real, it's not made up. And as you mentioned about going to Amina Castle and the frequencies that are there at Amina Castle, and I'm going to remove that word castle because those places are dungeons. So I'll refer to it as Amina Dungeon and the Cape Coast Dungeon because when you say castle, who lives at a castle? A king and a queen. There were no kings or queens in Elmina. There were no kings or queens that resided at Cape Coast. We resided there, and we were not kings and queens. We were, but we were enslaved. And so what you see and what you feel and what you smell, those things are real. So when I went back in 2024, I purposely went there because not to cry, not to break down, but I felt like the first time I may have missed something. And when I went the second time, I was so thankful because there was so much that I had missed of those particular dungeons. But the connection is so very real. You can sit there on YouTube and watch these videos on YouTube, but you have to be there. And I would say, given the opportunity to go to those dungeons and to know that at some point, and those are not the only two, there are many others along the coastal line, but know that that's where so many of us came from, that door of no return. It's a real door. It's a real place. But yes, I really enjoyed, as I said, my time being there. The economy, if you want to talk about the economy, the Ghanaian CD at the time was 16-1. Let me frame that for you. For every 1,000 American dollars, you have $16,000 in buying power. Let me repeat that. For every 1,000 American dollars, that's $16,000 in buying power in Ghana. So as the brother said, when you go there and they know you have American dollars, oh, you must be pretty well off. And for our standards, we may be working class people, but there, you're upper class. I had a driver everywhere I went. I had a cook every single day. And I really had to embrace that because I don't have a driver here in the States. And my wife does all the cooking, right?
Yes.
And she doesn't get paid.
What'd you say? I don't what?
Yeah, she don't get paid. But you, when you're there, you're able to really embrace those things. Yeah. So there's so much more to be said, but I know we got others up here.
Yeah. But I'm really drawing into that you said that the spirituality part of it and how strong it is and the deep connection of that. And I want to say, do you recall James Smallwood? I don't know, because he built the spiritual center in Ghana, but he said the spirituality, we have to figure out how to wrap our protection and our security because that spirituality did not protect us from the atrocities of slavery. Sure. And he said we really need to go back and revisit that. So, but it's amazing how you said how strong it is.
Yeah, it's extremely strong, and you see it with everyone that you meet. Virtually everyone that you meet. It was, I guess, a culture shock. If you mentioned culture shock, I didn't see a white person for 2 weeks. That's a culture shock. And when I did see one, I immediately said, "What are you doing here?" Like to myself, I'm like, "Well, what are you doing?" And you start having some kind of feelings about seeing people that are not African while you're there. But there's so many sights and sounds, and if you got $2,000, as the brother say, swipe that card and go. I lived off of about a $500 a month budget and still had change left over. So the American dollar is very strong. I believe it's now 10 to 1, but it's very strong. And I would say before you plan your next vacation to any other place, think about one of the 54 countries, and never mind the propaganda that you see on television, because the propaganda will scare you to death about the continent. I did not see swollen bellies. Well, I did see swollen bellies, and people eat really good there. But I didn't see swollen bellies and ribs, and I didn't see any flies. I didn't see any of those horrible images that we see on television. I didn't experience that there. So please go.
I'm asking one more question before we move. I'm sorry, I know you, Kwame and Nkrumah. I know, some of our connection to Ghana is Kwame and Nkrumah.
Sure.
Did you see a replica or have any discussions or anything that kind of brought him to light for you, the Kwame and Nkrumah?
Sure. Well, first of all, he's on the currency.
There it is.
He's one of 6 men that is on the currency. So he is celebrated wherever you go. There is a Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Center there. So he is a celebrated person, like we celebrate Malcolm and others over here. But with him being the first president of Ghana and being as strong as he was in his temperament, in his political movements, a lot of people don't realize that the connection between Ghana and China is very strong.
Oh, yeah.
And that connection is by virtue of him. He was honored by the emperor in China. His robe is at his house that the Chinese emperor gave him. I know China is kind of like the boogeyman, but China has a very strong presence in Ghana, and that's primarily because of the relationship that he built with that country. Yeah.
And one more thing, because you went most recently, W.E.B.
Du Bois.
Mm-hmm. Did you see? Yeah. I think he has a house there, or his memorial is there also.
Sure. Yeah. That's my frat brother. His house is there where he and his wife resided, and they both are buried on the premises. So once again, it's one of those things where you just have to go, and if you study history, go beyond the history that's presented to us, you'll really see how rich we really are. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll keep drilling. Okay, go ahead.
And also, well, I think what we're going to do, because for the sake of time, we're about to turn into our town hall meeting.
Well, I'm just going to get them to respond to the last two, and we'll
okay. You got more? Okay.
No, just the connection, draw the connection.
Okay.
Like you did with
Sorry, what's the question?
Oh, just connect us. How do we connect in like Nigeria? What is the connection? What do you see like, the door of no return?
Yeah.
What would you say that connection would be?
I would say, so when I did go, I actually didn't really go to that many, I guess, monuments, like historical sites, unfortunately, and that's one thing I really do want to do, especially in Ghana. But I would just say just how the people are and the mannerisms actually, just like, oh, it's just like, the Black people in America.
Okay, yeah.
So, kind of somewhat related, I think people kind of see Africa or West Africa as like the source of culture, and then everywhere else is just an extension of that. But actually, it's like we have a common ancestor, for the lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. And it's like, in both ways did the culture diverge. Like the culture there in 2025 isn't the same as it was in 1825 or something. So it's like Black people living in the diaspora, African people living in the diaspora, they're just as African as anyone that's on that continent.
Wow, that's good.
That's what I'm trying to say. So that's the connection there, and even I think you mentioned like gospel music or like faith music or worship music. Even in that, you can see like that call and response, things like that. And I would say that even if you can't make it to the continent, I would definitely recommend it. But even if you can't, I think if you're staying in tune with the culture here, right, and not aspiring for something else, that's how you're also like keeping your roots. So
I like that.
how do I summarize it? I'm thinking about. I think one point that was just made was the influence in both directions, and the fact that we're never once and for all. Even someone like Fela Kuti from Nigeria, who's one of the most celebrated African artists ever, a lot of his political development, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of it actually came when he was in the U.S. and did work with James Brown. So the whole call and response thing that people like James Brown did, that came from Africa. In the case of my experience, even on the question of spirituality, in Tanzania, the split between Christian and Muslim is about 40% each-ish, and another 20% traditional African religion or spirituality. But one of the things that amazed me, and I saw the same thing even in places like Senegambia, where it's like 80, 90% Muslim. The chauvinism that is portrayed as far as religious beliefs in the West doesn't exist in Africa. The Muslims celebrate and commemorate the Christian holidays in Tanzania. The Christians commemorate the Muslim holidays in Tanzania. And even, again, in places like Gambia, where it's 90% Muslims, they acknowledge the Christian faith, even if they don't practice it. And so the universality of our spirituality is front and center. Even the question of music. Places like Tanzania and Arusha is a hot spot for hip hop. And when I say hot spot, I mean going back to the essence, to the political hip hop. Kenya, similar thing. South Africa, similar thing. Senegal, a similar thing. And so all of these influences emanate from kind of a oneness of our people, that whether it's high life, whether it's bongo flavor, whether it's Afrobeat, music is critically important in our culture. Whether it's reggae, it's us. And so for me, and I hope for people here that are planning or considering going, is look for the oneness, look for the similarities, look for the intersections, and not for the differences, because many of the differences are just, in some cases, circumstantial or environmental. We may have more in common with someone in Lagos or Abuja, the regular working class person, than they will have with the petty bourgeois elements that are in the government there. And we've never seen each other, never been connected like that. So look for the synergies, the intersections, and see the oneness. And one of the things one of our ideological parents, Ahmed Sekou Touré, used to talk about is this idea of diversity and cultural unity. And too often culture is presented from an aesthetic point of view. What language you speak, what shirt you wear, etc., etc. But even the idea of us eating together is a cultural manifestation. There's a meaning behind it. There's a reason why we all sat at the table or sat around a bowl and ate out the same bowl, and so many other examples. So I implore us to look at things from a Pan-African nature. Even in Kenya, we were talking a moment ago about the secret rendition of the police department and the state security services during the Moi era. And when I was there, you may know that bookstore, I don't know, but there's a bookstore near the Central Business District in Nairobi, and they were talking about all of the underground movements, not only from the Land and Freedom Army, which was properly known as the Mau Mau, but all the way up through the 80s and 90s. Well, I grew up in Chicago, and there was also a secret rendition space that was run by a police officer named John Burge. And it was the same concept. It was the same concept where people, particularly people who were looked at as a threat to the status quo, were tortured, were brutalized, were forced confessions to crimes they didn't commit, etc., etc. So we have a shared experience in a lot of ways. And even the whole question of the Black Power movement that happened in the Caribbean and here was an offshoot of the armed liberation struggles that popped up in places like Algeria, Zimbabwe, Guinea-Bissau, Kenya, etc. years before. So we're connected, and that's the point I want to make, that we're connected at the hip, even if we don't realize it. So it's important for us to be intentional about our intersections going forward.
Wow, you really bring us back into that next segment of that interconnectedness and dealing with the Ibrahim Traore impact and how he has tried to communicate to
I said one more thing, quick thing. You mentioned GOAT. I don't know. I still don't know what you were talking about as far as GOAT. But I was married in Tanzania, and in Tanzania, they don't, at least at that time, they didn't do a wedding cake. They used a goat as a cake. And so, as opposed to this white cake that we ate off of, everybody got goat, at least those who were meat eaters. And that was like a centerpiece of the wedding from a cultural perspective.
the goat.
It was a good goat, too.
Wow, I just left that image in my mind. The book Death of an Author, and she talks about the goat and how that had impacted her whole life and her whole experience.
The actual killing of the
goat. Yeah, it was a huge impact. So and so I have that in my mind. So again, I think Donna, this was a dynamic conversation. I mean, you guys, if you understood what happened when our first interactive event years ago, it happened nothing like this. This is actually the peaceful moment. So I thank everybody for, just contributing. I do want to go on, but I know Donna, she has a schedule for us in terms of the African diaspora.
Yeah, we got a film schedule because we could talk all day about our travels and experiences to Africa. But now we need to transition into our town hall. And I think we're just going to keep it going. We're going to keep it going because actually, I definitely want to invite you all to be a part of the town hall. But if anyone else want to be a part of the town hall, come on, because we're going to do what we did on Thursday. Basically, we just widen the circle up.
Can we widen the circle down there because there's more?
No, we still need an audience, though. So let me just ask the question. Who would like to be a part of our town hall panel? No? So y'all the panel then? No. Okay, so but you know what? If you have any questions or if you have any thoughts, definitely chime in. We want you to be a part of it. You don't have to be on camera, but we still want you to be a part of it. So we're going to transition now into our town hall. And we have several topics that we're dealing with on the town hall panel. And, actually, I do need my sheet. The first one I do remember, thank you, dear.
Well, while she's talking about the town hall is dealing with the politics, the economics, and even the travel requirements of Africa. So coming forward into contemporary Africa as we look at the political leaders that are there, that are in charge. So the town hall is just kind of dealing with the business of Africa and how we all connect and how we can all be a part of the transition that occur, or even how we impact from the United States. There has been a lot that's happened. There's world leaders that have come into the United States. They just had a meeting last week. And so how are we connected to that? We have to figure out what our responsibility is on the global stage. And we as a people, I don't think even just looking at Ibrahim Traore, a lot of us don't even know who that is. While you got across the world, in third world countries, they're protesting, they're on the streets, they're saying protect him, they're saying look at his philosophy, ideology. We need our governments to work on that. We need our governments to build within instead of being dependency. And so we as Americans, we still have to be a part of that global movement. I keep pointing to you because you're a part of an organization that it has his lens on what's going on in the world. So that's what the town hall, that's the goal of this next segment, going into the town hall.
Right. And just give it title, past lessons, present challenges, and future opportunities is what we're going to deal with. And the first topic is Pan-Africanism. what is Pan-Africanism. So I'm going to let the professor and the activist, and if you want to chime in, you can too. Okay. Because you're part of the panel now. Yes.
So
And
before
you
to him to start it, to kick it off.
okay. So, and before we get started out, again, I want to give the opportunity because we can widen this because we had a panel on Thursday with about 8 people. So we can always widen our panel. So if you want to be a part of the town hall, and I'm looking at you, Design, but you don't want to be a part?
No, I'm enjoying this.
Okay. All right. So we,
I had a comment, but I'll share later.
okay. Especially when we deal with what's going on in Kenya right now because there's a lot of unrest in Kenya. Okay, but Pan-Africanism, what is it for those who?
It is a broad subject with a number of definitions. Obviously, our organization has one. And by the way, our party was founded by Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, the president of Ghana. He was
Tell them the name of your organization because we're kind of resetting.
All African People's Revolutionary Party. There was a book, I don't know if you all have it here or have ever had it, but there was a book written by Nkrumah called The Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. He was deposed by a CIA organized coup d'etat in 1966 after serving for 9 years as the president of Ghana. And he really was advancing the Pan-African movement. And one of the things he said was his greatest inspiration was Marcus Garvey. So he was basically seeking to take Marcus Garvey and Amy Garvey and the UNIA-ACL's concept of Africa for Africans at home and abroad to its next logical level, which made him an enemy of the West, obviously. Just like Ibrahim Traore is an enemy of the West now. But our organization under Nkrumah defines Pan-Africanism as a political objective and is defined as a total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. Now, some others, whether it's Dr. Umar or whether it's whoever, may have a different definition of Pan-Africanism. Some refer to Pan-Africanism as kind of a movement. Some refer to it as a vibe. Some refer to it as even an ideology. We do not refer to it as any of those. We have an ideology as our organization. It just happens to be called Nkrumahism, Toureism, Cabralism, named after Kwame Nkrumah, Ahmed Sekou Touré, and Amilcar Cabral. But our political objective is Pan-Africanism. And for us, it is talking about really an Africa without borders, founded on scientific socialism. So we say we are anti-capitalist, we are anti-imperialist. We know that Africa as a whole cannot develop under the capitalist system, which created the transatlantic slave trade, which created all of these borders in the first place. We have to deal with the antithesis of that, which for us is socialism. And we know there's a lot of misnomers about what socialism is, et cetera, but it's really a question of rule of the people. So for us, if we're talking about political democracy, where we're able to go to and do an election every 4 or 5 years, but we don't have economic democracy, we really don't have democracy at all. We want control of our resources, and we say Africa is the richest piece of real estate on the planet Earth. Whether it's Congo, whether it's Niger, whether it's Mali, whether it's Ethiopia, et cetera, and you can go down the line from Zimbabwe to South Africa to Namibia, and all of these independent struggles, these brother mentioned a moment ago, 54 countries in Africa. Go back even 15 years ago, Libya was attacked by all of the West, all of NATO, and not one of the other 53 African countries sent one single troop, one single piece of military equipment to support them. But there is a rule under the NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization. There is a rule under the NATO doctrine or guidelines that says if Italy is attacked, all the other NATO countries got to come to defend it. If France is attacked, all the other countries got to come to defend it. We don't have that in Africa. We need it. And even the Ibrahim Traore, which is the current president of head of state of Burkina Faso, and this alliance of Sahelian states that he is a part of, that Burkina Faso is a part of with Niger and Mali, one of the reasons that they came together was the attack on Libya, because once Libya was destroyed, all of these Western-sponsored militias, the Al Qaeda affiliates, etc., proliferated across that entire region and caused, and is still in some cases causing major havoc in all of these countries, in Niger, in Mali, in Chad, etc., in Nigeria, northern Nigeria, is also being impacted by these. And so they saw the error or the situation from the Libya case, and they said, we will not succumb to this same thing. If they're going to get us, they're going to have to come through at least all three of us. And so for us, Pan-Africanism is an objective. It is an objective that, when achieved, it will give sustenance to our people, even in Fort Worth, even in Dallas, even in Las Vegas, LA, etc., Jamaica, Haiti was here, all of these places, because we've had Black Wall Street, which was destroyed. We had the MOVE organization that was building an independent African community in Philadelphia, which the Philadelphia Police Department dropped bombs in 1985 and destroyed whole neighborhood.
Bombed.
They bombed them. The Black Panther Party for self-defense. Remember, the Black Panther Party for self-defense was the full name of the Black Panther Party. Even though they were armed, they were destroyed. Why were these entities destroyed? In our view, they were destroyed primarily because we did not have the backing of our homeland. And the brutality that our people face here in the U.S., in Brazil, etc., cannot happen to Chinese people, because China is going to back them. There's tens of millions of Chinese outside of China, and some of them don't even agree with the Chinese government. But the Chinese government is clear that if they are attacking the diaspora, the Chinese diaspora, that's an attack on China. So there's a diplomatic absoluteness of the Chinese government that, whether you agree with us, whether you don't agree with us, whether you're dissident, you are Chinese, and we have duty bound to set up an infrastructure worldwide to protect our people. And until Africa organizes itself to do the same thing for our people here or wherever we are in the world, anything we build, even of an independent, strong nature, is always going to be under threat in our organization's view. But as I said, there are different definitions of Pan-Africanism, and people are encouraged to do their own study and work through it.
Well, that's a detailed definition.
Sorry.
Yeah, that was great.
Context is always.
But you know, and it's similar to what I've just because I listen to Patrick Lumumba. That's just,
She loves Patrick.
and he made a point, until the African on the continent have control, it impacts everybody on the diaspora, and it cannot afford to be weak, because it compromises the stability of Africans across the world because of this imperial concept, imperial view that we cannot sustain that way.
And I remember when you mentioned Libya. I mean, I just remember how tore up I was when I seen how they did Gaddafi. You know, how they just it was just awful how they just did all that, and like you said, not one country. That's crazy.
Just one other side story. So when I was in Tanzania, the APRP sent me to this anti-imperialist conference in Berlin, in Germany. And
Hold on. An anti-imperialist conference in Germany? Okay, say no more.
in Germany.
Wait a second.
I know.
So
But
I'm sure that was bugged, but go ahead.
But on the way from the hotel to the venue, there was this big park somewhere in central Berlin, and it's basically a tent city of Africans, of people from the Middle East who had to, in some cases, flee their homes, whether it was Turkey, whether it was Syria, etc. And they were living in these tents. And I had a quick chance to talk to looked like maybe his late 30s, from Nigeria. He had lived in Libya for about 12 years, he said, and he had a thriving air conditioner business there. And sub-Saharan Africans were welcomed there, did not have problems there, were able to live their life. And Libya had the highest standard of living on the entire continent of Africa. They had the highest literacy rate, or maybe the second highest, either the first or second highest, to only Zimbabwe. in the entire continent of Africa. So when it was destroyed, one of the things that happened was that these militias went to attack primarily sub-Saharan African residents of Libya, because one of the things that environment did was it presented a practical implementation of Pan-African unity from the level of the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they had to break that up. So now you say all these people say, oh, well, Libya is racist, but that's new to the dispensation of the country after the era of the Gaddafi government.
Okay. You got some thoughts on Pan-Africanism?
I could just kind of give it a one sentence definition, which is just the unification of diasporans, African diasporans all over the globe on one united front. That's kind of a short version, even though my brother added many more layers to it, but it's really a unification. Some may refer to it as a movement, as you said. It's not an ideology, but it is most certainly an awareness that we're all connected. And you don't have to take a DNA test to prove that. There are certain things that will occur to each of you when you go to Africa, any of those countries, and you won't be able to explain it to others. It will happen. You will see it. You will feel it. You will say, wait a minute. We do that over in America, and we thought that was an American thing, not understanding that it was already in our DNA to do it over here, but that's where it came from. Just the way that a lot of brothers shake hands. We don't do traditional handshake. We add a little extra flavor to it, right? We didn't make that up over here. That came from Africa. And if you actually shake hands, especially with a Ghanaian, you'll get a little extra, and then at the end of that, there's going to be what? A snapping of the fingers. Right? Right. We think we made that up. No. It came from Africa. So
We didn't make that up.
I see a lot of that even with the on the colleges, when the frats do their
steps, yeah.
Yep, a lot of that I
Stepping
see.
and strolling,
A lot of that is African.
Kwame Nkrumah went to an HBCU, and he was a Phi Beta Sigma. He went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania.
Okay. And I was just thinking about definition of Pan-African, and I think of Bandeli. Pan-African connection.
So tell everybody who Bandeli is.
He summarized it very simply for us. Well, Bandeli and Kwete, they own the Pan-African connection in Dallas. He passed, but it's still going strong with Sister Kwete. So if you get a chance, definitely go there if you haven't been. In fact, I think they call it what she call it, Africa. I forget her saying. Oh, I can't remember it right now.
It's Little Africa and America. Little Africa. They call it. Everybody call it like that.
Yeah. But anyway, I remember him saying that it's basically Africans organized, Africans unite. Just to shorten it up, But okay, so Pan-Africanism. So let me ask you this. Honestly, your thoughts on Pan-Africanism. Did you want to share, sis? I know because you put a time out by default.
I'll let them have the more.
Well, what's your thoughts on Are you a Pan-Africanist?
Yeah. I was gonna say that I like the emphasis on it being anti-imperialist and anti-capitalist, because I think more than ever, if you're observing what's going on in the world right now, even as West African and particularly Nigerian culture is becoming a little bit more popular or mainstream, and I think so much in the aesthetics of culture are coming up right, but it should have, I guess, it should be rooted in something. It's not okay, we're all focused on the aesthetics of it. It's about I'm trying to find the words, but
have some history to it.
Yeah, some history to it, and just not a superficial basis. And and I think just because I think, especially those that do come here often, are usually, if not middle class, they are going to be wealthier, right? But they don't represent the whole, if that makes sense. We can't leave out, whether it's in the States or whether it's in West Africa or Brazil or Colombia, you can't leave out the remaining like 80% of people. It's not just about Black excellence, like hashtag Black excellence, and it's just kind of like capitalistic definitions of excellence. It's about everyday people.
Everyday people. Yes, that's important. Okay. So, is Pan Africanism a fantasy, or is it something that is really achievable? What are your thoughts? I mean, is it?
Any audience, if you have.
I mean, do we really see? And this, I believe it because I see it happening. But do we really see Africa uniting? The countries coming together, and then once they come together, of course, the diaspora can come together, and we can, be on that level where I believe we both were. What are your thoughts on that? Pan African.
I think that's all.
Yeah, I think it's happening.
You see it happening?
Yeah, it's happening because I've lived half of my life, or the earlier parts of my life in Africa, and then I lived the recent 20-something years in America, and I'm seeing the change. Initially, it was like Africa was so much of a mystery to African Americans. Oh, it was just this mystery. It was this primitive thing. And now it's an option to go to vacation. Now, almost every African in America that I meet has an African friend. So the unity is coming together. Of course, when it starts superficial, and then there's some understanding to it. And I grew up in a Pan-African family where we kind of knew that we're just one. And if I was in Africa, most of the kids back then did not know much about America other than what's on TV. And when I moved here, people here did not know much about Africa. So there was heavy levels of ignorance on both sides. But that ignorance is shrinking very fast. It's like every year I meet someone who's telling me, trying to go to Ghana, trying to go to Kenya. And when they say that, they say with certainty that they know it's going to be something good back there. And then the whole panel, almost half the room, has been to Africa. Not because they were forced to, it's because there's a yearning to go there. And what I've always said is Africa has a lot to learn from Africans in America. And Africans in America also have a lot to learn from the Africans on the continent, and to remind us, Africans in America keep reminding us to remember who we are, because even though we're at the continent, we take a lot of it for granted and we don't remember. And then the Africans in America, they remind us of spirit, because Africans in America have the spirit, have the confidence to just shake things and move things. While for a long time, Africans in the continent have been beat down by the political powers to the point where they thought nothing could change. So that inspiration is like equal, and it's happening. So I believe it's happening.
That's good. That's good. And I see it as well. And what's the impact of social media as far as us connecting and uniting? Any thoughts or comments on the impact of social media?
I think to his point about people becoming more aware is by virtue of social media. I think social media allows us to really transcend that information quickly. Like this video that's being done, recorded today, it will go out to thousands and millions of people who otherwise would not have this information, but yet they can type in a few words and instantly get this information. I did a lot of research before I went there the first time, because I didn't want to experience too much culture shock. But I think culture shock can be a good thing. But once you get there, and to your point, there was so much to learn but so much that you can learn from the video, from social media. But I would say social media has really done a really good job to a certain extent to share that information with us and for us to really be more educated about one another and dismissing all of the other kind of colonizing ideologies that continue to just really penetrate us. And it's unfortunate. But to your question, yes, I think there is a bridging, and I think the bridge is not as long as it used to be. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks to technology.
Yeah,
There's some good, right? Okay. And so, what ways can African Americans, or just African diaspora, connect better with Africans in the continent? How do we build that relationship better? Let's just focus on African Americans here in the U.S. Right? How can we better build relationship with the Africans that are in the U.S.?
I would say, I guess, just me dealing with people from the continent, I think history and being able to connect and being able to just talk about, if you need a Congolese, if you say Patrice Lumumba and talk about how you respect Patrice Lumumba, I mean, it's like they open up. They respect that you've learned something about their culture and their experience, and understanding that we wouldn't experience life today as it is today if we didn't have what Congo offers to the world, the mineral and the resources, and understanding that so many lives are lost in the Congo because of this resource. And just that basic homage and respect and connection, it really breaks down, walls. Or even if you're talking to a Nigerian, even though, you ask them what tribe you're going to eat, just having some type of base really breaks down and open up to conversation, and get rid of some of those stereotypes that they may have of African Americans, or even our own stereotypes that we have of Africans. And, everybody has just, if you talk about a Ghana, a Kenyan, or a Nigerian, everybody has these stereotypes about Nigerian, right? And so, you kind of break down some of those walls, but just having a foundational source. And I think that foundational source is history, not the contemporary.
Doing something.
Yeah, that's what I always go to, the history. If you say the word Fela, everybody loves you. Like, you are loved. Like.
To quickly add to that, I think history, to me, is one of the most foundational important things, because that provides the context of what you live in today, and to not acknowledge it, because whether you acknowledge it or not, history is still here, So, where's the train of thought? So history, and then also literature. I think there's because even when you see things on social media, right, just kind of like quick previews, but whenever you're involved with literature or books, you're getting like a richer, deeper touch of that experience, and more, you're putting your foot into other people's shoes. And I think that goes both ways. So I think it's more important than ever, especially in the times we're living now, where literature is not being as prioritized as maybe it used to be back then. I think if we can get people more involved in books and to see the value in it.
She's like my new BFF.
But that's what, like he said, music. He talked about music, and it's like, you got the music. We want to bring literature just as strong, because there's so much in the book. Like, but he said one of our core connection is music. That binds us all. Is that rhythm,
But I agree with you. If people read more books, it's a way to connect.
Like for me, real quick, even though, like, being first gen, you're kind of like, you feel kind of stuck, like, in between. I'm a big Toni Morrison fan, and to me, that's American history right there, like, throughout her books. And if someone from, Nigeria were to read it and to really be involved and engage with that text, it really opens up, like, just the context.
Understand the struggle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She said Toni Morrison, and on the flip side, I'm a Wole Soyinka, and he's Nigerian, and that's one of my. I really like Wole and his writing style and his how he put things into perspective. So that's interesting.
All right. Any other thoughts on that? On how we could build better relations?
We got a question from the audience.
So I'm just saying, I've never been to Africa before, but I have been to other countries. Well, one of the things that I really enjoy is learning about and being open to learning your history, other people's history, because everybody likes to talk about themselves, you know, not in a bad sense, but when you show interest in someone else's culture, they'll open the door and let you in. If you're kind and very and sincere about it, they'll let you into their culture to show you things. I was over in Korea. I ate over Korean people's homes. I shopped with them. They took me downtown. They took me around the city with them and everything. And at one point, I was walking with a Korean guy down the street, and everybody stopped on the street and looked at us. And I told him, and I said, they were turning around and looking at us. And I said, can I ask you something? And he said, sure. And I said, is this very unusual for me to be with you? Because I'm an American troop, and he's a soldier. And he was like, yes, for some people it is. And I told him, and I said, and this was back in 86 or something. And I told him, I said, well, if anybody asks, just tell them I'm your sister, you know. And they just laughed, you know. But I think just like you're saying, and then when I was at Bible studies a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, I just was talking about a city, you know, and I said, what is that city today? And it was in Egypt. And then I was like, I got to Bible studies, I was so excited because I was telling my teacher, and I said, you know, we kind of read past things and we don't break it down anything. And I said, do you know that city is Egypt today? And they were like, what? You know, and I'm thinking, yeah, there's a lot of places, even in the Bible, that we just read past. And I said, well, those places, a lot of them are in Africa. And I said, if you stop and look at those, you can get maps, like you said, history maps. You can get maps that show you then and now. And you'd be surprised, because I was like, wow. And it kind of perks your curiosity. It's like, this is where this city was, you know, and it's amazing. It's amazing. A book that's 2,000 years old, and talking about places, Egypt, Africa, other places like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome for sharing.
Okay.
You got to wrap it up.
Yeah, we got to wrap it up. So let's talk about Ibrahim Traore impact. How many of us, who haven't heard of him? Raise your hand if you have not heard of him.
Who was that?
Ibrahim Traore?
Traore, yeah.
From Burkina Faso.
Okay. I think it's easy. Raise your hand if you have heard of him. Okay. So I guess we do need to introduce him to, you know. So how would we introduce Ibrahim Traore?
Everybody.
Let me just say, when I first, he's like a tall glass of water for African people. But how would you?
Let's take this.
He is.
He talked about Amaseko Toure, right? And then Amaseko Toure, the connection to empire is Samori Toure, right? And so you're dealing with Samori Toure, you're dealing with major African empires. You're dealing with major civilizations. So you have the Mali, the Songhai, and the Ghana Empire. And those major empires, people were owning their own resources. They were producers, they were traders, they built their families, they created. You have Timbuktu in their area, which was the center of education. So we understood as a people who we were. And then you had this movement of slavery, this institution of slavery, this institution of imperialism. You had so many people coming into Africa and looking at its greatness and looking at its strength that they wanted to strip them of the people that produced this. And these people were stripped, and these became human resources. They became treated as shadow of property. And so we look at it from great empires to being enslaved. And then after, I'm doing just high level, right? And then after the enslavement period, after we fought against slavery, and after we revolted against slavery, there was a new system that came in place, and that new system became colonialism, and that colonialism set the stage for further exploitation of Africa and the continent. And now they go into there's this big scramble for Africa. And in that big scramble for Africa, there was a partition of Africa, and it broke down the nation across tribal lines where people were family, people had kinship. And it was that harsh reality that just was so divisive. They pit brother against brother, tribes against tribe, even deepened the demise of the continent, right? And so you had these revolutionary leaders that see more for themselves because they understood our oral tradition. And so you had, correct me if I'm wrong, because you got the professor and the.
Come on, you do it.
So correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going over like just all the reading that I do and the experience and my experience in history. And so you had these revolutionaries that fought, and even though women have fought, you had the Mihandas in East Africa, and then you had the Yahasandiwa of Ghana that fought, and you had Nzinga in Angola. They fought against these imperial systems, and these imperial systems, I'm going to call it out. It was the British, the Portuguese, the Germans, the Belgians. All these had taken somewhat the France and somewhat the Italians. And so you had these revolutionary leaders, and one of the revolutionary leaders that came out was from Burkina Faso, and that was Thomas Sankara, right? And Thomas Sankara fought against the French control of Africa, and I think he was assassinated. He was murdered. And so that same energy, now you come upon neocolonialism. Well, what is neocolonialism? Neocolonialism is we get rid of the colonial empire, but there's still a control on our resources, on the African resources. And so you have somebody like Ibrahim Traore that comes into power because he studied and he understood the resources that his continent have, and why are we not so self-sufficient? Why are we providing electricity to parts of the world? We don't have electricity in our own nation. Why are we doing these things in this part of the world? We don't have those resources that we can build and get rid ourselves of poverty and increase our healthcare system, increase our education system. These are our resources here in Africa. The world's resources is right here in Africa. And so he is one of those soldiers who came in through military leadership, military might, military control. And he said Burkina Faso is going to be one of those nations that's going to rid ourselves of this aid and this dependency and get rid of this, what we call dead aid. And that's where we're at today, is Ibrahim Traore off the energy of leaders that have tried to take control of their own resources and not deal with this dependency that imperial systems create. And so they're looking at their own resources. And so recently you had this.
He put out the French.
Yeah, he put out the French, and more recently, I think Benin just put out somebody else just put out the French. But now it's this.
It's the effect. I think it's going across the continent, even in the diaspora now.
They're examining these leaders, and they're examining the corruptness. And I'm telling high level, you definitely go back, and we have a whole bunch of books back, a whole bunch, and you can type Ibrahim Traore on your phone and everything come out. There's just so much information.
I can remember the Kenyan leader that they're posing right now.
That was Ruto that just came in here into the United States. A lot of the African leaders came into the United States. And the thing is that in their impact, they're always talking to the African Americans. They're always talking to the diaspora. They're always trying to impart, like, you have power. You have a voice. We need you to use your voice along with what we're doing. I mean, this man literally took all his gold reserves back And then you have the General of the United States, Langley. I don't know if y'all recall that. And he
Yeah.
said
How much you
he directed his energy and commentary towards Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso and said he was manipulating the people and stealing from the people to empower himself. And in Russia, Ibrahim, I don't think it was Russia, I can't remember where he was at when he said this. He responded to General Langley and he said, how dare you try to control our resources in the direction of our resources? This is Burkina Faso's goal. And he said, outside of all of that, I'm not even looking at all of that. I'm looking at the fact that they sent is not a white person. It's not, I think he gave three things, but he said the third thing that really hurt him was they sent another black man to confront us. That was the third thing that really hurt Ibrahim Traoré. So they're looking at all the wealth that we've had. The most damaging thing that they sent the black man. And he said, I understand that you got misinformation. And I can understand that because there's a lot of misinformation on social media. But I don't understand. If you haven't gotten there, you really have to explain why you did this and not create another Gaddafi situation. That's high level, like really high level.
That was a lot.
That's high level in 2 minutes.
That was a lot.
So I don't know. Did I go to? I guess you kind of cleared up. I kind of went high level from just history in general.
Let's hear someone else thoughts on Ibrahim Traoré. Any other thoughts about him? Oh, okay.
The ones that know him.
Okay. What do you want to share?
What's his origin? Where does he come from?
I can hear.
He said his origin.
He's from Burkina Faso. I don't know his. You asking what from his tribal origin? I don't know. I don't know the details of that.
Yeah, I don't know
I'm
his
sure
exact.
you can probably look it up. But
Yeah, his exact tribe.
Yeah.
But it appears that the people love him.
Oh yeah. The African world loves him.
Everybody is looking at him, and I don't want to override the Ibrahim impact, but you still had the leaders of Niger and Mali. Did I say that right? That are also just as powerful, and what they formed was the Sahel organization. Yeah, the Alliance of Sahel. Which again is where Timbuktu was in that area, you guys. Just to bring this context, that's the World Education Center of Education at one point. So, and then you have Melina in South Africa. Again, and he's so powerful that when they brought the African leaders to the United States, they were talking about Melina in South Africa. And he confronted that. So I'm saying that there's a whole global movement going on. And African Americans, we have got to get to the point where we're a part of this movement and this knowledge and this, new age of how we deal with our own situation, our own reality. If it is for us to start to help these nations start controlling their own resources, that only empowers us. I think you said it a little bit earlier. If they're powerful, we're just as powerful. You have, and I think he said it earlier again. You have nations that can depend on themselves. If you have Chinatown, they have a base of China. If you have East Indians that are in a lot of different jobs, higher positions, but they have the base of India. So again, we need our own connection point. At Verizon, there was a study that this guy did on Verizon. He was talking about how so many of the salespeople were so successful in their company, and he was not getting the type of sales to sustain his life, to help his family. He said, why are all these other groups getting all these different sales? You got the Christians, you got the East Indian. Why are all these other groups getting this sales and getting this promotion and getting these opportunities on the job? And he said they had a nation that they could tap into. They had the nation that they can increase their sales, increase their opportunities. You know, and so we have to be able to tap into one another just to help our, it's a circle effect. You know, if I'm successful, you're successful. It's a circle life.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, Danya. Okay. Professor, what are your thoughts about Ibn Turan?
You know, I guess I get to sit back and watch like a lot of people do, you know, social media. What I've gathered from him is people criticize him because he took power, he took over by force, he took power by force. But if you look at throughout history, power is almost always taken by force. But it's what you do with the power, which is the most important thing. And just me sitting back and watching, I don't see where people dislike him. When the people are protected, he is a military captain. He is. Yes, you have the military that protects you, but when the people are protecting you,
Oh yeah.
that's a whole nother level of respect and understanding of what the leader or the leadership is actually doing. When the people come to protect you, and it's just something to admire. I'm hoping that he sticks around long enough.
Well, he's survived, what, 18 attempts?
22.
Yeah, it's
Is it 22 now?
like every 2 weeks, every 10, 14 days, something is happening. But I'm more hopeful that the other African leaders really get a sense of we can do it too. If he can do it, as young as this brother is, we can do it too. And let's unite and do it together, because all of these external forces will continue to come on and into Africa to exploit. And when you talk about the neo-colonialism, I saw some of that while I was even there. The one thing I didn't share earlier was, well, in the previous episode, when the school system, the colleges and universities, 16 of them in Ghana, when they decided that they wanted to leverage themselves as an educational institution, you know what they did? And they didn't tell me when I got there. I had to find out a month later. They went on strike. Why did they go on strike? Well, why would we go on strike? Benefits, salaries, right? More money. They went on strike because of the illegal mining. They call it galaxy. The illegal mining that continues to occur in Ghana. They went on strike in September. They didn't come back until November. Now, how does that impact the educational system? How does that impact the rest of the world? The international students that come to Ghana for their education. So it affected their budget, but more importantly, it put the government, it put the new president, and said, look, if you all continue to allow us to be exploited, we will continue to strike. That was a leverage that you would never see over
So
here
was
in
the
America.
mining system? They were.
So, like a lot of African countries, the exploitation are the resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there, the exploitation are the mines, the gold mines, the other minerals, and it has just continued for far too long. And they say we're not going to teach another student until you do something about this.
That's interesting because that's a whole different sector. That's why you got one sector, but the other sector of the economy said we're the ones that we're protesting.
Right.
The
educational sector leveraged their position as an educational sector, and they leveraged
powerful.
the politicians
That's
to say,
powerful.
but we won't vote for you until you do this. You have to change this. Something that I'd never seen in America, and I just sat back with a big smile on my face, even though I was a little upset because I couldn't really do anything with the institution, so they got off the strike.
That's
powerful. I noticed that happening in Africa, like even in Kenya. The people are holding I call it the Equatorial effect. Maybe it's not, but I don't know. But they're holding their leaders more accountable now. Like they are not like they're protesting in the streets. They're just like what they did with what's the one in Kenya, Ruto. Yeah, I mean because they say he started off Pan African. Somehow along the way he got veered in a different direction, but they want him to be more Pan African. So they're protesting that. They want their leaders to be, you know, for the people. And so you see a lot of that going on.
I think one thing that we should make sure we know, like a phone call. But with Traore is they're not simply forcing these foreign mining companies, whether they're from Belgium or France or Canada or whatever, out or to deal with revenue sharing or gain more of the revenue that comes from the extractive industry, but they're implementing manufacturing locally. Because really the big hustle with the imperialist corporations, whether it's IBM, whether it's Alcoa, whether it's Shell Oil, BP Gas, whatever, is they're getting the raw oil or the raw diamonds, cocoa at very small margins, and then taking them back to external countries to transform them into finished products, which is where you make your money. So what they're doing is they're saying, we're going to process this here, we're going to manufacture this here, and then you're going to buy and give us a fair price because we have greater control of the market, which is what, and if you don't buy it, at least we'll be able to service our own people, right? Which is what Nkrumah was doing in Ghana. They had, when I was in Ghana the first time, we went on, actually both times, I went on a tour where Nkrumah had developed rubber factories. They actually produced cars back in Nkrumah's time. Any number of things, and of course, cocoa was one of the big cash crops during the colonial period that they took over and was trying to develop into a manufacturing power in Ghana, and that's a problem for these groups. Even just go back to recently, Elon Musk, what was it? I think Bolivia, where they where they engineered a coup because he's going after lithium for the Teslas and all that stuff, and somebody called him out on it sometime later, and he said, "We'll coup who we want." So they don't even hide it. Like,
it's very bold now, ain't it?
I mean, they don't even hide it. And so, but Ibrahim Traore is following the tradition of Thomas Sankara before him, of Muammar Gaddafi, who also came into a coup d'etat, and as was mentioned, it's what you do after a military takeover. Do you usurp power for yourself, or do you seek to empower the people? Fidel Castro, same thing. He sought to empower the people in the process of developing revolutionary Cuba. So there are examples in both directions. But I think with Traore, we have to look at that example. And all of these examples, from Patrice Lumumba to Fidel Castro to Muammar Gaddafi to so many others, inspire the entire African world. Even 25 years ago, when in Zimbabwe, when the farms that had been taken over or that had been under the guise of the European colonialists or settler Zimbabwe.
Okay.
That was a inspirational situation there, and this was just 2000 in 99, 2000, and this was after they fought a 15-year armed struggle to kick out the Ian Smith regime, who was a settler colonialist in Zimbabwe, or what they called Southern Rhodesia back then. And in 1980, they brokered a deal to end the war, to give Zimbabwe independence. And they had a promise of a 10-year agreement for a willing buyer, willing seller by the British, with the British, who was supposed to then compensate the white farmers, right? Reagan comes in, Margaret Thatcher comes in, they renege on the deal. So now 20 years later, the freedom fighters, many of them were still alive, they said, no, screw this. So they started to occupy these farms, and they talked about, there was this, I don't know if you all ever sold it, but there was this magazine called New African Magazine. It was produced in England, but it was really a Pan-African magazine. They did some fantastic exposés on that situation. But it was the freedom fighters that occupied, and Mugabe's government had a decision. He was either going to suppress the occupation or support it and advance it. He supported it and advanced it. And that scared all the people in South Africa, all the people in Namibia, all the people in Botswana, Zambia, Kenya, who were under those same type of regimes or situations. But when the white settlers were pushed out, a lot of them ended up going to Nigeria, where the Nigerian government actually gave them refuge, if I could use that word. And so while we talk about Traore, while we talk about the AES, we still argue that it needs to be on a Pan-African scale for it to be effective. When Traore kicked out the French military, they just went next door to
Ivory Coast.
Well, they've been in Ivory Coast, but some of those who were kicked out of Mali and Burkina Faso simply went to Chad, which is just next door. And so if Chad pushes them out, if Ivory Coast pushes them out, if Senegal pushes them out, we get them off the entire continent. So it can't just be a single country or a single small group of countries. It has to be a Pan-African level motion.
Okay, we got to wrap it up. So real quick, any commentary on the FIFA 2026? You want to speak on that? For those who don't know,
anybody a football soccer player, guru,
Player,
fan.
Yes.
Well, it's coming in 2026.
It's coming in 2026. We have really got to. Sports, the power of sports is amazing. It connects the whole diaspora, I think. And also, oh my God, Patrick Lumumba just had a conversation on this sports and how Africa has not invested enough into sports, but it is fueling so many nations. So many nations are able to participate in the Olympics because they have African athletes, players. And so, even from track down to soccer, I hate doing that to them, but okay, we're on African diaspora. I'll say football. So in all these sports, even tennis and Japan, I can't think of the young girl's name. I'm having a brain fog. Naomi. So even Japan has claimed her, but she's getting her talent and her training from her dad, which is Haitian. And so he's like, why are we not investing or putting stock into our athlete, which is fueling the world? And so now we're coming upon FIFA 2026, and it's, even though Argentina does very well, but it is that DNA that it has a stronghold on sports across the world. And how do we become major players on the economic landscape when it comes to sports? And why are we not as involved? So I have kind of made it my mission to make sure that we are prepared for FIFA 2026. In all my lack of knowledge in terms of you guys, the breakdown of this, okay, we have 8 games here, 5 games over in California, 1 game is somewhere else, and all this kind of stuff, and we have this round. And so, if anybody out there want to help me break this down, but I think we have to be prepared for the African nations that are going to participate in FIFA 26. So, I was with the rest of the world, not so much in the United States, but excited to see Jamaica and Ghana and Nigeria, and I think it was Trinidad, get into this bout this energy bout that has captivated the rest of the African diaspora to see who's going to come out on top. And by September, that is going to tell us who's going to qualify for the World Cup 2026 this September. And so I'm trying to just cheer on my African brothers, and sisters in this football and be able to be one of the, be in position to welcome this influx of people that are going to come to Texas. And so I just think it's onerous on us to be prepared. How do we get prepared? How do we take advantage of the people and make these connections? And so we're gonna have 8 games, and I think one of the championship games here in Texas.
So that's a lot, and that's we're covering a lot. So this really, our conversation need to be continuous. We have to keep talking about this, so we can't cover it all in 2 hours. So but I will say though, do anyone else want to comment on the big soccer football? I'm sorry.
Well, I think the question was asked earlier, what can we do among Africans in America to create better relationships or synergies with African immigrants or firstborn, generation born here? That's one of them. That's one of the areas, sports. Even the NBA has started an Africa League a few years ago. So you talk about what they're getting and what Africa is getting little return from. They're sucking up our resources as far as our athletes, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of African immigrants are trained in medicine and nursing. They work in these hospitals. They work in these healthcare facilities. We need to make sure if we're working in those facilities, we need to be intentional about developing those relationships. And the churches, of course, and the spiritual facilities, whether it's the masjid, the church, etc. Maybe we should just be intentional about going to a mostly Nigerian church or Ghanaian church, etc., as far as building those. But specifically on the soccer or the football, and I don't know if this is directly answering the question, but when I was in, and this is talking about, again, the Pan-African feeling or the Pan-African nature of our people. When I was in Tanzania, there was a World Cup, and I believe it was Ghana or Ivory Coast that passed to what they call the knockout stage, which is like the last 16. Every bar in Dar es Salaam was just full with people cheering for that team. I think the Ghanaian side. Mm-hmm. And I made a point to someone, you will never see this in Europe. You will never see pubs in England sitting cheering for a Belgian team or a French team. Never. So it shows the oneness of our people. Even the concept of us going up the street saying, hey, what's up, bro? What's up, sis? What's up, cuz? That's an African thing. It talks about the oneness of our people. So we can use this tournament because for those who don't know, football or soccer is the world's game outside of the U.S. Right. You can't go anywhere in the world where soccer is the sport. Not to say that there aren't other sports, but you're going to have a hard time turning on the television or a sports channel anywhere outside of the U.S. and not have soccer on all day, especially in Europe, South America, Caribbean, and Africa. So that's an opportunity for us to have a social environment where we can develop these relationships and just break down barriers and see more of the oneness that we have with each other. But I don't know if you were talking about the business aspect.
No, both all of that, because like you said, you have the doctors, their pharmacists, and all this, their career path, but they all meet at the soccer field. Really? They all will play because the stress of just working. How do they de-stress? Some play, we have basketball. They're out there in that soccer, just like football. I got to get that right as I do my international thing. But they're all no matter what career path or what your level is, they are Bob Marley's in their mind. When they see that they love soccer. Like Bob Marley was this great, he was singer, but you will find him doing
this
football.
past time you was doing
football, you know. So again, that's a great wow, and I'm wrapping my mind to really understand the concept, and it's hard for African American young men to understand the sport because they said they played the whole game and nobody scored. They only scored 1 point. He said that's a whole lot to do, and you only score 1 point. Like they don't.
It's chess.
Huh?
It's chess.
Yeah, and that's what they have. You have to look at it from a different lens. you know, that's the biggest complaint that I've seen so far in telling them, hey, get ready for this. It's coming.
Okay, so we are definitely out of time, but we got a lot of stuff we got to continue the conversation, and we will. We need to do a better effort of continuing this conversation.
Go take their picture.
Because so much is happening, and each week something's going on, and we can just kind of get further behind. But we got to be intentional about having these conversations, especially if we want to prepare for the FIFA 2026. You know, just we got to do better with that. So expect to hear. You know, stay tuned for our next African diaspora conversation.
Can I do one plug?
Mm-hmm.
One quick
Oh yeah, I want all of us to.
Oh, there's no plug there.
So just one quick kind of educational, cultural plug, and I invite everyone that's here to visit Tarrant County College, the downtown campus. There's a photo exhibit, and it's called Frames of Discovery, Moments from Ghana. And what I did while I was there, you know, picture, but I was able to kind of bring together I took over 400 pictures, but about 40 of the top pictures and blew them up almost to life size. And when you come there to the art gallery, you will have an opportunity, and how I promote it, I would say, have you ever been to Ghana? And of course, people say no. And I say, I'd like to take you there. Do you have a few minutes? And I take them to the art gallery. And for the amount of time that you will spend in the art gallery, you will feel like you've been in Ghana. And so I am more than happy to curate for anybody that wants to come. But it's been there all June this month, and it will come down in August. So I do have some cards, and it has additional information. But it's the Tarrant County College, the downtown campus, and it's called Moments from Ghana. And that's just kind of my summary of my time being over there.
Now, what days can we go?
Any day between Monday and Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
In August, then the campus is open from Monday to Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm sorry, it's Monday to Saturday. So any day, anytime. Yes, you can go. And
we're going to have to put this on account because, you know, we celebrate the whole July, even though we
Sure.
have this day. So that's another.
And I have a flyer, so I'll send the flyer.
And
the
we get digital one. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yes.
You
Okay.
got something.
Any other announcements before we close out?
Well, I don't know if it's solid, but there's DFW-wide coalition attempt to organize a series of Black August activities,
Oh yeah.
including Curb Fest, which I think started in Philadelphia, and it's been done in different cities around the U.S. in recent years. On the 23rd of August, the APRP is trying to. I think one of our comrades have been in touch with you all.
Yeah, we're trying to schedule the time and date.
Pan-African Women's Day, which commemorates the founding of the Pan-African Women's Association in 1962. The official date is July 31st, but our organization tends to commemorate it during the month of August. So those are some hopefully things that's going on, but there's always actions happening. One of the other things that's happening with that coalition around Black August is the development of some jail support efforts,
Oh yeah.
both in Tarrant County and Dallas County, that we're trying to
Political
schedule.
prisoners. Yeah.
So
All right. Okay, so you could go ahead and stop the live and get prepared to. You have any closing statements?
I would say, again, we'll probably do some more distribution. We have an array of books that you can check in store and online, and then Instagram too is highlighted on Instagram. And we're going to continue the conversation, and we're going to share your event as part of our continued July activities for Africa and the African diaspora. So, yeah.
Well, it's going on to August too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I guess I'll turn off the live. Ashley might be gone by now. She's working. Okay. You're okay. All right, thank you for tuning in. Please stop by the Doc Bookshop if you're ever in the DFW area.
Thank you.